I'd like to introduce you to Julia Rijssenbeek, who's the global shaper at the World Economic Forum and a senior researcher at FreedomLab, and she'll be talking about the role of nature in our technological future. Last night we were talking about poetry and love, now we talk about nature. Over to you. A round of applause for Julia, please.
Hello everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all for having me. Pakistan, this is the first time I'm here and I'm really loving it so far. And I'm not sure where Asfar is, but I really like to thank him in person, especially because he has been proven to be a great ambassador to Pakistan to bring me here to this beautiful country for the first time. I'm thrilled to see more of your colorful country, but the hospitality so far has been just marvelous. Thank you for that. I am a philosopher by training, and I am a researcher at the think tank called FreedomLab, based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where I investigate geopolitical shifts and the effects of technological innovations on our everyday lives. And currently I'm also doing PhD research at the Agricultural University looking into the ethics of biotechnology and synthetic biology. And my main focus is the future of food and the future of food security. Now, I'm also working on a project with our Dutch ministry on food security. Even as a food country, the Netherlands has to address this topic for the future. And I'm sure, as we also heard this morning, food security is also a very important issue for Pakistan. So I'd like to share with you some thoughts about how I see the role of nature in food systems in the future, and how I could offer you a maybe unconventional way of addressing both the climate crisis that we're facing today and the health crisis. But let me begin with a small personal memory that I have. I used to grow up in the Swiss mountains, in the Alps, as you can see. And I used to go on long hikes with my dad and my brother. And we used to go up until the snow and even sometimes sleep in a little tent in the snow. And it felt very natural to me, even if I was this small little girl in this huge, gigantic mountains, it felt very natural. But I remember that I was surprised to see various kinds of animals, even in these kinds of circumstances. So there was still life in these kind of environments. And that was something that really impressed me. I was really impressed by nature. But today, I live in a city, and in city life, we are mostly impressed by technology. If I ask you to think about our future, if I ask you to imagine how our future will look like, there's a big chance that you will think of technology, right? So technology has the future. We also often think about how technology is going to impact our daily lives in the future, how artificial intelligence is going to challenge human intelligence, etc. But I think that if we want to think about the future, we have to start by thinking and learning from biology. So again, today we live in a modern age where our lives is mediated by modern technology, and that has our focus, right? If we are here at the Future Conference, people expect you to talk about technology. And also during modernity, it delivered us a lot of progress. So with modern agriculture, for example, we were able, also Pakistan was able during the Green Revolution to lift many people out of hunger. And also modern medicine helped us to get rid of certain diseases that we would die in another world. So modernity has brought us a lot of progress, and modern technology has brought us a lot of progress, but also it has changed our relationship to nature. So we think now in this modern world that nature is something that we can manage, that is controllable, that we can create with technology, that is predictable, etc. And also, it has made us think that we can somehow dominate this world of nature and of all other organisms, right? And then this year, suddenly, we were surprised by this little tiny virus, this microscopic life form, and suddenly it was not us dominating nature, but nature was dominating us. Entire societies were disrupted by this little virus that we could not control. So suddenly this modern thought of human above nature was challenged. And also, we see now, not only this pandemic, but that there's a lot of more problems with our modern technology and our modern inventions. Think of plastics. This used to be the best modern invention. It helped us in a lot of ways, but now it's turning its back against us, and we see how our oceans are getting polluted. But also pills. First, we got rid of a few daily diseases, but now we see that there is an antibiotic crisis, not only in the meat industry, but also in healthcare. And next to plastics and pills, I'd like to call this modern age the age of pesticides, where this has been a major point of green evolution in order to grow the yields, to produce more yield. Now it's turning its back against us because it's toxifying the soil, right? So we have to find other ways in order to solve these problems that modernity brought us. And so I would like to take you with me and to fast forward to a possible future, one that is high-tech, but also inspired on biology. Because I think biology shows us a lot of characteristics and values that we need for the visions of the future that we can have today, like adaptivity, sustainability, circularity, the ability to heal, to adapt. These are values that we need most at this time. And I'd like to take you specifically to this very exciting field of emerging technology in biotechnology and synthetic biology that I'm researching in my PhD currently. And I would like to say that in modernity, we saw the world as being framed in machines and organisms. But with this blurring field of technology and biotechnology, we will encounter more artificial organisms and living machines. So these dichotomies are blurring. And these technologies are very promising because they will disrupt many aspects of our daily lives. And hopefully, it will bring us towards a more bio-based future. That's my hope, at least, to get away from plastics, pills, and pesticides, from these modern inventions that were based on fossil fuels, that were non-degradable, and that were causing a lot of problems, towards seeing industries disrupted by biology, not only for the consumer, but also for the entire planet. And I'd like to start with a very unconventional perspective, namely microbes. Microbes, I know this is a weird thing to talk about microbes on a future summit, but think about it. We define microbes by not being able to see them, but we only know about 2% of all microbes on our planet, while they have such a large impact on our ecosystems and on our own health. They have been here for the entire history, since the beginning of evolution. And like we have a big impact on our planet, these microbes have an enormous impact on our daily lives. So why am I telling you this? Because I believe that these microbes can help us to move away from the problems of modernity and of modern inventions. What are the lessons that these microbes can help us with? How can the lessons of microbes inspire technological development? First of all, they show an incredible amount of adaptivity. Look at this little creature here. It's a water bear, and we've boiled it, we've frozen it, we've thrown it out of space, and it's still surviving. So it means that it's showing a sense of adaptivity. Second, the circularity. What we consider waste is feed to microbes and the other way around. And then thirdly, agency. While plastics, pills, and pesticides are static, non-degradable, finite, passive objects, microbes are living creatures. And they can even eat plastic if we want, so that would help as well, right? So this is a very humbling vision, to start with microbes in order to talk about the future. Certainly for us, as we have considered ourselves masters over nature, it's a humbling vision to start with microbes. But I'd like to share with you a few examples of how microbes are already disrupting many interesting businesses and industries. First of all, microbes in our body. Do you know that you exist of more microbes than of own cells? So your body consists of more foreign cells than of own cells. They are helping you to digest, they are living on your skin, etc. And so also microbes are very interesting to look at for medicines. Already a lot of insulin is produced by microbes, so they are used as a production vessel in large bioreactors. But also think of microbes in design. This lady is the famous MIT professor, Neri Oxman, and she is using microbes, fungi, and other living organisms in order to create design. But also think of microbes in the building materials, such as self-healing concrete, etc. Then microbes in agriculture. Before I was talking about pesticides, but we see a disruption in the pesticide industry with microbial pesticides, since these are non-toxic and not harming humans, the ecosystem, or other living things. Of course, you probably know also microbes in energy, so they are disrupting the energy with biofuels by algae, for example. But the most interesting example that I'd like to share with you is the one of microbes in food production. The search for a sustainable way to feed the planet is one of the largest challenges of the 21st century. Climate change, water shortages, food waste, soil degradation, malnutrition, obesity, but also how this morning it was called out that the children that are stunted in Pakistan even, these are only among the few often mentioned problems regarding food safety and food security. And already this morning it has been addressed by a few speakers that food security today is also a big problem for Pakistan, looking into how we can shift from importing food to exporting food for a country that is so fertile and resourceful. But from the perspective of the Netherlands, I'd like to share with you that for us also food security is an issue. As we are an exporting country, we produce too much food, and it comes with a lot of green gas emissions, air pollution, soil degradation. So the overproduction is a big problem for our country. So you can look at it both ways. And again, I'd like to turn to microbes for a solution, since cellular agriculture is on the rise and is very promising in order to substitute the regular and dominant ways of producing food and cattle and protein, etc. Looking, for example, at microbes to produce protein, so scientists have already been able to create protein on a large scale in bioreactors using microbes. So no plants, no crops, no animals involved. And this is an important thing, since protein transition is among the key ways in order to address a sector that has been so polluting to the planet, the meat industry. And I'm not here to preach, because the Netherlands is producing a lot of animal protein and is exporting a lot of pigs. But also, I see that in the Netherlands, we are also looking towards alternatives, since this is not a viable one for the future. Think about cultured meat. You've probably heard about this trend of cultured meat, of creating hamburgers in the lab. That is also a way in order to make the transition towards sustainable protein. But most interesting for me as a Dutch girl who grew up drinking a glass of milk every day, probably being the reason why I'm so tall, is that microbes might disrupt also the way we produce milk. So this is a Dutch cowboy who used to be in the meat industry and in the milk industry, but is now looking to create milk from grass through microbes. Why is he doing this? I think the fact that we can use these microbes and therewith reduce environmental impact, and only use a fraction of the land, water, energy, storage, and transport, because you can produce it locally, is an important disruptive technology to look at for the future. Not just for the Netherlands, but for every country in the world, since meat production and meat consumption and protein consumption has gone up drastically, specifically in emerging countries. And lastly, why is microbes for food not a bad idea? Think about how COVID is actually a zoonotic disease. By stopping to eat meat, or in order to change the meat-heavy consumption pattern towards a more planet-friendly, we can also get to the root causes of these kinds of pandemics. Because I'm sure this COVID crisis is not the first pandemic that we will face in this world of globalization, modernization, and intensive travel among countries and big population in cities. So we are engineering microorganisms in order to produce food, drugs, energy, and material. It's disrupting the way of production as we used to know it, and it's turning us towards a bio-based economy. And just like, as I said, I was a small creature in these gigantic mountains, but we have an enormous impact on our environment, these microbes will have an enormous footprint in our future. And this will be possible with the help of synthetic biology and advances in biotechnology. It will help us to use less resources and be less dependent on fossil fuel inventions, to go to less pollution, no waste, no degradation of soil whatsoever. And already this morning it was mentioned that investment in the bio-based economy and in a green recovery, these investments are soaring. So people see this. And I think really, beyond microbes, really any nature-based solution is the way to go. I think a great example for this is also the reforestation program in Pakistan, where you are planning to plant billions of trees in the next years. That is just a marvelous example of working with nature. So just to conclude, I think we must turn to biology to make our technological future smarter and to face the climate and the health crisis we are in right now. And turning to nature is not a bad idea, since nature has already invented everything. Technology will shape the future, but nature is the future. Thank you.